So first of all, thank you for the invitation. Thank you for inviting me to come along. And it's good to see some familiar names on here, some names I recognize. And so a little bit about me. I am the co-founder of Sooner Safer Happier, the company. We help organizations to deliver better value sooner, safer, and happier, typically large, traditional, global, bureaucratic companies. That's generally who we help, sometimes old, sometimes teenage. And in terms of my background, I was previously leading ways of working across Barclays Bank globally, across 80,000 people. And I've been an Agile and Lean practitioner for almost 30 years. So the early 1990s, before the word Agile was being used in this context. At the time, it was called lightweight processes. So I'm going to share with you some patterns and anti-patterns around business agility, around ways of working. And a lot of these are mistakes that I've made myself. I've made these mistakes so that you don't need to. And this is a bit of a summary of the book, Sooner Safer Happier. So the book is a collection of patterns and anti-patterns around ways of working, around business agility. So I am going to share with you 8 anti-patterns and patterns for ways of working. I like the language of patterns and anti-patterns because there is no one size fits all. There is no best practice. Organizations are unique. Your organization is unique. An anti-pattern will generally give you a headwind and will make a hard job harder. So basically, why would you? And a pattern will give you a tailwind and should make a hard job slightly less hard. And I say it should because there isn't one size fits all, complex adaptive systems. Your organization is unique. But in the experience of hundreds of organizations, generally the patterns will help and generally the anti-patterns won't help. However, there will be some cases where an anti-pattern for most cases might actually be a pattern in your context. So the important thing here is experimentation and not one size fits all. So the first one is the first pattern anti-pattern pair is, do you want to do an agile transformation or are you doing an agile transformation? If I ask that question in a conference, all the hands go up and yes, we want to do an agile transformation. So my number one piece of advice, if you want to increase your agility, is don't do an agile transformation. And that is speaking as someone whose job title previously was head of agile transformation. And effectively the one pager, with that type of language, the one pager is, hi, my name's John and I'm here to make you do agile whether you like it or not. And as you can imagine, that's not always met with an open embrace of, oh my God, that's amazing, thank you. Quite the opposite. It's like, why are you inflicting agile or lean or DevOps on me? So instead, my lesson learned is focus on the outcomes. So the mistake that I made on this back in 2015, we ran an agile transformation and we were measuring all the wrong things. We were measuring how many people we've trained, how many agile teams we have, how many product owners we have. We were measuring the wrong things. We were also measuring the outcomes, but we hadn't made them the headline. So my number one learning is start with why. Focus on the outcomes. What are the outcomes that you're using agile or lean or DevOps for? They are a means to an end. They are not the end. So this red background means it's an anti-pattern. So the anti-pattern is, this gentleman is here to install agile. Finally, treating it like an upgrade to your operating system on your mobile phone or your device or your tablet or whatever. It's not a case of installing agile like an operating system upgrade to your organization. Instead, it's 80% culture. It's 80% culture. It's only 20% process. And this is a common mistake I see companies make is, oh, this is all about Scrum or Scrum at scale. And if we do Scrum, we will magically transform, or Scrum at scale or any other any other framework of your choice. I've now installed the Agile methodology. Unfortunately, it won't work until you've uninstalled your 20th century mindset. Culture is the biggest leader. Behaviors is the biggest leader. Agile is a process, not a destination. Yeah, and it's a mindset. It is a way of thinking, a way of working, and it is about the behavioral norms. Did you feel this way about Agile transformation before you were head of one? I suspect you did. Yes, in terms of inflicting capital A Agile, Adam, yes, correct. I did feel that way, yeah. So the outcomes I have found to work best, and this is, working across industry sectors with multiple organizations, with large organizations and medium-sized organizations, is the first one is better. The better is quality, and this is building quality in. This is not inspecting it in at the end. So to quote Deming, this is, if you inspect quality in at the end, it's like saying, I'll burn the toast, you scrape. Tell you what, don't burn the toast in the first place. Second is value. Value is unique. I find a good way to measure value is through OKRs, objectives and key results. The key results, if they're written well, are a good articulation of value. And value is unique to your company. It's unique to your organization. You could be private sector, public sector, charity, religion, it's just organized human endeavor. So your key results, it could be market share, revenue, customer net promoter score. It could be environmental and social governance. It could be planting trees, reducing carbon. So it's entirely unique to your organization. The next one is Sooner. Sooner is the heart of Agile and Lean. It is minimizing time to learning, minimizing time to value. So the measures that I find work well here are lead time from concept to cash, from committing to doing something. What are OKRs? Objectives and key results. Marvin can talk more about that later. Throughput is a count of items of value over a given period of time, and flow efficiency is the amount of time that work is being worked on during the lead time. What do you think the typical flow efficiency is for knowledge work for a large company? Either call it out or put it in the chat as a percentage. What percentage? Yes, yes. Yeah, David, Sean, Len, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, spot on, you got it. Flow efficiency is usually 10% or less. That's frankly shocking, that work is waiting 90% of the time. So I believe there is a lot of magic in shining a light on flow efficiency. Focus where the work isn't rather than where the work is. What is causing work to be blocked? Where are the impediments to flow? And if you take flow efficiency from 10% to 30%, you've just tripled your throughput. You've just reduced your lead time by threefold. Little's law. So shining a light on flow efficiency is important. Safer is continuous compliance. It is agile, not fragile. It is cyber, data privacy, infosec, fraud, anti-money laundering, all of that type of stuff. It's not leaking your customer data onto the internet. And then finally, happier. Happier is customers, colleagues, citizens, and climate, because improving ways of working is not at any cost to society or to the planet. So this is a balanced set of outcomes. And that word balance is really important. Because if you don't have a balanced set of outcomes, you get the law of unintended consequences and you don't realize it until it's too late. For example, the State of DevOps report shows that the mediocre performers, they are mediocre companies in terms of relative performance, are reducing lead time, but quality is going down and happiness is going down. And the reason is because it's working people harder, not smarter. It's cutting corners. It's trying to take shortcuts to reducing lead time. So learning, you need to have a balanced set of outcomes. And what I recommend is this is what you measure. You measure quality, which will be unique in your context as to what types of, there's many different measures of quality, whether it's IT, incidents, it could be straight through processing, it could be dual keying, triple keying. It could be call center rework. There's many different measures for quality. This is what you measure, and what you're focused on is a positive trend over time on quality, time to value, safety, and happiness. When you do this well, it's a virtuous upward circle. They reinforce each other. Should we only view outcomes as customer value or other? No, it's much broader than that. It's societal value. It's value. It's humanity value. It's what's an organization? A collection of humans. It is making the world of work more humane. Actually, it's making the world of work more humane. And that's, by the way, that's our mission statement for Sooner Safer Happier, is making the world of work more humane. So in terms of the size of the prize at an organization with 80,000 people after 3 years, we saw a 20 times improvement in quality. So we had a 20 times reduction in failure demand. On average, teams in the context of change were 3 times sooner on lead time. Very specifically, for those of you that are maybe a bit more knowledgeable on this topic, the 85th percentile lead time in the histogram of lead times was a third of what it was when we started measuring it. So the 85% interval for lead time was 3 times quicker, and the highest performing teams were 20 times reduced on their 85th percentile lead time. We saw a positive compliance trend and a reduced impact radius. So if something did go wrong, it was a whimper rather than a bang. And people in those roles, InfoSec, cyber, data privacy, fraud, anti-money laundering, were now spending 80% of their time proactively instead of reactively. And then happiness, we saw the highest colleague engagement and a positive client net promoter score trend. The anti-pattern is agile for the sake of agile, lean for the sake of lean. We're doing an agile transformation. We're measuring how many agile teams we have. We've trained 15,000 people in agile in the last 6 months. It's a meaningless metric, I would suggest. And I know because I have made that mistake. We trained too many people too quickly in the past. And so you don't measure agile, you don't measure lean, you measure the outcomes you're striving for, which I would suggest are those that are on the screen. So lesson learned number 2, pattern anti-pattern number 2 is, do you want to scale agile? I asked that question in the conference, all the hands go up. Yes, I want to scale agile. Yes, we're scaling agile. My advice is, if you want to scale agility, don't scale agile. That's my advice. Instead, continuously descale the work. If you think about it, descaling the work is scaling agility. We don't want to scale agile. So true story, it's in the book, 100 people trying to deliver some value in a traditional waterfall big batch approach. 18 months later, haven't delivered anything. So you know what? This particular organization decided to get another 100 people to also try to deliver the same business value, still in a big batch waterfall type approach. What's the definition of stupidity? Doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. So now you've got 200 people failing to deliver any business value. And what happened was 5 people were taken from the 200 people, and they successfully got value into the hands of retail customers within 3 months. The problem was, it wasn't a 200-person problem. It wasn't a 100-person problem. It was a 5-person problem. So scaling agile, taking your existing dysfunction and existing large teams and then applying pick your scaling framework of choice on top of that isn't addressing the problem. You need to descale the work. You need to remove the complexity and then you aggregate in context, complex adaptive systems. There is no one size fits all. You descale, and then the scaling is an aggregation of descaled teams and a descaled organization, which you can't do overnight. There's no silver bullet. So you achieve big through small, not big through big. So the big green line here is a Kubler-Ross curve, the peak of excitement, the trough of disillusionment, And then at time T2, you climb your way out of the hole. Now, the half-life of a CIO or a COO or a CEO is less than time T2. So typically, someone on the C-suite has lost their job before you climb out of the hole. And typically at the bottom of that dip, you're in a period of chaos, because it's like everyone's learning to ski at the same time as we do the overnight big bang. Hey, everyone, we're going agile on Monday. Friday, you're a project manager. Monday, you're a product owner. It's too much change too soon. A big bang agile transformation. So instead, rather than everybody trying to learn to ski at the same time, think big, start small, learn fast. Start with small teams. And so that yellow line is a series of smaller Kubler-Ross curves or J curves, or the Satir change curve. Start small, and smaller is faster. Apply an agile mindset to agility. Think big, start small, learn fast. Run experiments, prove it in your context, and you will get further forward more quickly. Sometimes I speak to senior leaders and they say, we don't have time, we need to do a big bang. That's completely backwards. And my response is, if you don't have time, you don't want to do a big bang, because you'll have 18 months to 2 years of chaos. At time T2, typically 18 months to 2 years of chaos. So start small. And the reason behind this is people have a limited velocity to unlearn and relearn. In terms of ways of working, in terms of agile and lean, in terms of changing how we do what we do, people have to unlearn and relearn. And how do people unlearn and relearn? They need psychological safety and experimentation. So the pace of change in your organization is driven by the speed of unlearning. And the speed of unlearning is driven by the amount of psychological safety. If there is no psychological safety, people will be too frightened to run experiments, to fail, to try something new. So, dear leaders, dear organization, if you wish to go quicker, you have to really work hard on your psychological safety and experimentation, and making it safe to fail. And there is no such thing as a failed experiment, only learning. The anti-pattern: think big, start big, learn slow. We're leaving on a Friday, traditional ways of working. You start on a Monday, we have new ways of working. Number 3 is, do you want to mandate one way trademark? You'll be surprised how many companies do mandate one way of working. My advice is don't. Instead, invite over inflict, and not one size fits all. So the anti-pattern here is, we're mandating agile. And here's another one. We're rolling out squads, tribes, chapters, and guilds. The so-called Spotify model, which, as Nieberg wrote in 2012 at the bottom of his white paper, by the time you read this, we will be doing something different in Spotify. It's not the Spotify model. The Spotify model is actually the culture and the values from Daniel Ek around autonomous teams, empowerment, and experimentation. That's the Spotify model, is the culture, not squads, tribes, chapters, and guilds. But I'm sure many of you have either seen or are experiencing or have experienced a top-down infliction of, hey, we're pivoting to tribes. Who wants to be a tribal leader? Or other words, fleet, crew, domain, banana. So instead, this is the diffusion of innovation curve, Everett Rogers, 1962. 508 studies of how people embrace change went into this. On the left, you have your innovators, 3 standard deviations from the mean in a normal distribution, motivated by the shiny new thing, the Tesla, and the Apple Watch. And then you have your early adopters, 2 standard deviations from the mean in a normal distribution. Then you have crossing the chasm. Geoffrey Moore wrote the book on crossing the chasm, how you go mainstream. Then you have your early majority who are sitting on the fence, just waiting to see what happens to the innovators. Then you have your late majority thinking, what are those weirdos up to? And then you have your laggards who just want their fax machines back. Thank you very much. And you can pick pretty much any group of 10 people, and typically any leadership team, and you will have people who plot to this curve. Pretty much any group of 10 people, apart from maybe on this call, because maybe most of you on this call are on the left-hand side. But most leadership teams, you'll have your champions, you'll have your fence sitters, and you'll have your critics, your skeptics on the right, and that's perfectly normal. So the anti-pattern is, attention everyone, we're all going agile tomorrow. And not catering to who's an innovator, who's a critic, who's sitting on the fence. That is not an optimal approach. Instead, get behind your innovators, identify your champions. Maybe it's a community of practice that you run inside your company. Invite over inflict. Hey, we want to improve our ways of working. We want to deliver better value, sooner, safer, and happier. Who wants to go first? Who's already doing this? Who's done this at another company? Put your hand up, volunteer. So then you'll get the passionate people. And for those of you that are leading on change, put all of your energy into the champions. Don't try to convince anyone of anything. The words convince and resistance shouldn't enter your vocabulary if you're going about change the right way. It isn't about convincing anyone of anything. And if you find yourself trying to convince someone about something, I would suggest think about how you're going about change. It's not about convincing. It's about understanding the selfish gene, identifying the champions, understanding what problems people have, start with why. Again, it's not about convincing agile. And then you need to communicate. So crossing the chasm, change is a social endeavor, and you have to plug that gap with communicating relentlessly. Town halls, newsletters, pat on the back, public recognition, community of practice, meetups like this, and so on. People are looking for social proof, and humans are motivated. Our brains are still wired for survival, neuroscience. We are motivated by reward and going towards reward, and we're motivated to go away from threat. So you have to think about incentive and reward and recognition, and be very intentional about that. So be very, very intentional about the pat on the back. The best form of recognition costs nothing. It's free, which is public recognition. Oh my God, well done, Kishore. Amazing job, and team. And doing that on on the stage in a town hall, on an all hands, that kind of thing. And practices equal principles plus context. I've kind of slightly plagiarized this from Dan North with a bit of a tweak. Your guiding principles are consistent. For example, focus on flow, respect for people. Your context is unique, so therefore your practices should be unique in your context. The anti-pattern is inflicting the golden hammer, which is if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So, for example, a particular scaling framework, if the only tool you have in your toolbox is a particular scaling framework, everything looks like a nail. Number 4 is, do you want to delegate change? This is around leadership. If you do, my advice is don't. Instead, leadership behavior will make it or break it. This is the anti-pattern. Leaders in a room, we're going to be agile by the 22nd of October, 2023. Of course, there's complexity and emergence happening outside of the office. The pattern is servant leadership. Oh my God, we had no idea you're dealing with this. How can we help? So there's a big shift here from command and control, from dictatorial, giving out orders, instead to servant leadership. Turn the org chart upside down from reporting lines to supporting lines. It's servant leadership. The servant bit, how can I help? The leadership bit, high alignment. Here's the North Star. This is the goal. I've got input. I've heard you. I've listened to everybody. This is the high alignment. Now I'm going to get obstacles out of your way so that you can get your job done. So the three behaviors that the three pattern behaviors that I see most, which are good go-to behaviors, is number 1, to role model as a leader. Number 2, create an environment of psychological safety. Number 3, an emergent mindset. So role modeling, be authentic. be vulnerable, be willing to fail. Number 2, the number 1 determinant of high-performing teams, Project Aristotle, Google, is psychological safety, back to the point before about the speed of unlearning. And then the 3rd one, emergent mindset. This is around complexity, complex adaptive systems, acknowledging that the future is not knowable. Typically, a lot of people that, with a traditional mindset view the future as being predictable. So we're going to put a Gantt chart together at the point of having learned the least with milestones in it. And the definition of success is hitting the milestones that we came up with 18 months ago. Like, no, you can't possibly predict the future for something you've never done before. So there's this big mindset shift to hypotheses and experimentation. And the definition of success is value and learning, not a milestone. And it's people process tooling. So this is a mistake that companies make, is process tooling. Oops, we've forgotten about the people. We're going to do Scrum and you're going to use Jira. You're going to do Kanban and you're going to use Jira. And we've forgotten about the culture. Very common anti-pattern. No, culture first. 80% of this is behavioral norms. So the anti-pattern, change is for you, not me, command and control, inflict over invite, and a culture of fear. Culture of fear is a guaranteed way to make absolutely no progress. Number 5, do you want to do water scrumfall? My advice is don't do water scrumfall, your Gantt chart with the word sprint 10 times in the middle. Instead, build the right thing. This is the pivot to outcomes over output. So the anti-pattern is a focus on velocity and story points. Yay, we hit our target of 60 arrows per minute fired into the ether. We've achieved a velocity of 25. Great, well done. Instead, we hit an actual business goal. And so what we want is the most value in the shortest time with the least effort. It's not about how many story points we can, in a feature factory, we can produce off the end of the assembly line. No, that's from the 1900s. So this is the shift from productivity to valuativity. And this is valuativity is a word I've made up. It's the most value in the shortest time with the least effort. And again, for those of you that are knowledgeable on this topic, weightest, shortest job first. Cost of delay divided by duration, CD3. Most value in the shortest time with the least effort is what we're aiming for, not the most amount of story points. So this is a pivot from role-based silos to value streams, from outputs to outcomes, OKRs, from temporary teams to long-lived teams on long-lived products on long-lived value streams with long-lived customers, not temporary project teams. And the definition of success isn't milestones in a Gantt chart that was put together 18 months ago. It's learning and value and pivoting. That's the definition of success. So there are 2 dimensions. There's time to value and there's the most value. So first of all, time to value. So this is where value streams come in. And by value stream, I mean team of teams, multidisciplinary team of teams. For example, other words used are tribe or crew or fleet. There's words that some companies are using. So this is about, and the reason for multidisciplinary teams is to improve flow efficiency, as well as engagement and happiness and everything else. So this is optimizing for time to value, for flow, long-lived teams on long-lived product. Now, an important point here, value streams are nested. Spotify never got big enough to realize that they needed nested tribes. But if you're doing this in an organization with 100,000 people or more, you need nested value streams. And then on top of that, you add the high alignment, which is OKRs. And what I find works here is you have your strategic group-wide multi-year OKRs. You then have your business unit, multi-year objectives and key results. You then have your annual OKRs. You then have your quarterly OKRs. This is elephant carpaccio, slicing the elephant thinner. And ultimately, you keep on going. So quarterly OKR, monthly experiment or epic or initiative, whatever word you want to use, weekly iteration, daily story, hourly task. And you have strategy alignment. You have a thread, you have the golden thread of value and strategy. You can link execution and strategy. It also gives you a daily feedback loop on your strategy. So you can be super, super nimble and have genuine business agility. This is genuine business agility, never mind Scrum. Genuine business agility, because you've got a fast feedback loop on the right-hand side, optimized for the most value on the right. So you can pivot instead of it being a 3-year strategy that's fixed and never changes. And value streams are funded, not projects. So your capacity funding value streams. The anti-pattern is not being aligned to value streams. And by the way, this is a target state that takes multiple years to get to this target state in a company. You know, this is not an overnight pivot, just to be super crystal clear on that. So the anti-pattern is not being value stream aligned, predetermined output over outcomes, milestones in a Gantt chart, or water scrum fall, a Gantt chart with the word sprint 10 times in the middle, and 3,754 stories which have been predetermined. Number 6, do you want one size fits all controls? Don't build the thing right, speed and control. So this is governance, risk and compliance. This is information security, cyber, data privacy, fraud, anti-money laundering, PCI, Sarbanes-Oxley. The anti-pattern is typically the default answer from compliance type roles is no, because that's the easiest and the least risky thing to say. So product teams normally feel like they're slowed down because the answer is no, or it's one size fits all approach to risk. The pattern, the better the brakes, the faster you can go. So you need really good brakes, and so that you can stop really quickly, but also means you can go faster. So the pattern I have found to work here, and I've gone very deep on this topic. I was the regulatory accountable person for change in the past, is you take your quarterly business outcome as your unit of conversation. You might have 10 product teams in your value stream. You have one safety team. It's a multidisciplinary safety team. It's a specialized secondary team. InfoSec, cyber, data privacy, enterprise architecture, fraud, and so on. You have a catalog of risk stories, and then based on how risky the thing is that you're doing will determine what risk stories apply. Two-factor authentication, encrypting data at rest and on the move. If you're building the restaurant menu application for your canteen, you don't need to implement very much information security. Typically for companies, it's one size fits all. Everyone has to comply to the 300 years of audit points. You have an engage control point and a validate control point. Engage is making sure we're building the right thing. Validate is making sure we've implemented and we've tested the risk stories, ideally automated kind of DevSecOps type automation for security. And then you resume your continuous deployment. So the anti-pattern is speed without control, control without speed. First one is fragile. The second one is not agile, or inspecting controls in at the end, and then you get 6 months of unplanned work, which is what normally happens. Number 7, do you want to have information silos? My advice is don't. Pop the learning bubbles, become a learning organization. So typically learning is restricted to your role-based silos or your teams. So the anti-pattern here is the brains in the boxes. We're not sharing learning. The pattern is sharing learning, and there's many ways to share learning. There is awards, internal awards, newsletter, meetups, case studies, blog posts, communities, videos, journals, communities of practice. I find to be incredibly effective at sharing learning in a company. So I previously ran 37 COPs with 15,000 people in them, where I worked previously. It brings a global company together. And then conferences. So also what I found to work well is internal conferences. Previously, we ran 4 conferences a year, 1 every quarter in a different geographical location. And then finally, do you want to create a digital feature factory? My advice is don't. Go slower to go faster, or you will end up going slower. This is not about churning widgets off the end of the assembly line. Impediments are not in the path, impediments are the path. So if someone says to you, or if you say, oh, we can't do this because of HR, because of finance, because of the PMO, congratulations, you've just identified what you need to do next. Improving daily work is as important as daily work. You have to build it in to your day. Otherwise, you will get technical debt, process debt, and culture debt, and you will go slower. So very quick recap, focus on the outcomes, for example, better value, sooner, safer, happier, apply an agile mindset to agility, think big, start small, invite over inflict, not one size fits all, empowerment, autonomy, invitation, I feel in control. Leaders go first, role model, outcomes over output, value streams and OKRs, minimal viable compliance, not one size fits all set of controls, pop the learning bubbles, intentionally share learning, community of practice, meetups like this. And then finally, you're never done improving. There is no end date. We can't say the transformation is done because human systems entropy and you have to keep your foot on the gas. So thank you very much. Thank you for listening. That's a recap of the 8 patterns and anti-patterns. The book goes into much more detail on those, and happy to take Q&A.